Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. I'm Bob Wells. My guest today is Garry Williams, international soul music presenter. In today's show we discuss Garry's life as a former professional football player, head teacher, and how his lifelong love of soul has led him to become one of the world's leading presenters of soul music. We talk about how the genre of soul music has evolved over the last 60 years, and we hear how the soul scene is alive and flourishing today. Garry's weekly radio show regularly receives up to 100,000 listeners all over the world. As well as playing old soul favourites, a large proportion of the show features the very best of today's contemporary indie artists. Garry has earned his reputation for a relaxed and mellow listening experience, the perfect accompaniment to your weekend. Later on in the show notes, we provide links to where you can listen to Garry's shows. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, Garry.
How are you doing, Bob? Lovely to speak to you.
And to you, Garry. Thanks ever so much for coming on the show.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
I've been listening to you over the years, and there's some fantastic songs that you play. Not just old soul, but you know, the contemporary stuff as well, which is fantastic.
Thank you very much, Bob. Yeah, I like to support some indie artists in the world of soul music from around the world. You know, that's proved to be very, very successful. And it's nice to have a blend of classic soul and what I call 21st century soul as well, you know, because some people don't get the opportunity to listen to some new music, particularly in the world of soul, because the new stuff doesn't really enter the mainstream charts. So I'm a big supporter of like the Sweet Rhythm charts and the UK Soul charts as well, and of course they feed the indie artists that are there around the world. So it's a pleasure, you know, linking up with them and working with them and promoting their music and helping them to get on in the world. Really, it's
great, and obviously I've seen you advertising your stuff on Facebook, and the amount of people that follow you is you know, it's really good. Garry, first of all, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself? You how did you get into soul? When did you first get into it, and when did you start this presenting?
Yeah, well, I think soul music first hit me when I was in a comprehensive school, really, Bob. It was I used to catch a bus in those days up to the old comprehensive school here in Wales. And I can remember it quite clearly. You know, I was on the bus there, and the speakers were above my head where I was sitting towards the back of the bus. And this track came on. It was Bernadette by the Four Tops. And I sort of stopped and I thought, wow, what a voice. Found out later, of course, he was the great Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops. I thought, wow, that I've never heard anything like that before. And I was just, you know, blown away by it. I went out and started to listen to a little bit more music by the Four Tops, which was fantastic. And then, on the bus again coming home, and I heard Al Green. And he, again, blew me away. And it was the following day. We were allowed out at lunchtimes back in those days. We would go up to the local city centre. And Woolworths was one of the record stores that would stock the records there. So I went out and bought Al Green's brand new album. Wasn't very popular in school at the time when I brought that back because everybody was into rock. And, you know, and so I was a little bit different, really. But it just blew me away. Those two artists, you know, set me on the road to loving soul music, and it just went on from there, really. And I've always gone to the clubs and the pubs that across South Wales back in the day that actually played soul and funk. And I would only go to those clubs on certain nights. We'd travel as far as Bristol, actually, to go to them. And it just went on from there. So it was just a natural progression then to get into presenting that sort of music, that genre of music, and something that I love today and still enjoy listening to and playing that wonderful genre of music.
Well, yeah, it sounds great. What did you do before you started presenting?
Well, quite a diverse thing. I was a professional footballer for a number of years. I was at Arsenal as a young schoolboy, and
wow.
And then I went to Cardiff City as a full-time professional. So, and during that time, you know, there was a love of soul being in London at the time as well, and you know, the great bars and the clubs, and it was a great opportunity up there. And then from there, really, like all football players, you get released. I had an opportunity to go to a lot of different clubs. Harry Gregg, the great Manchester United goalkeeper, wanted me up at Crewe. I could have come down here to Swansea after leaving Cardiff, and I could have gone across to Holland. But I wanted something a little bit more secure in my life, because really, as a football player, if you're in one place for 2 years, you're extremely lucky. So I wanted to keep that sort of physical side of the game going, and I went to play semi-professional, which I played for a number of years. And funny enough, earned more money playing semi-professional than actually picking it back in those days than you did as a professional. So, but I went then to a teacher training college, and I studied physical education.
Right.
And then I worked my way up in education and eventually became a head teacher before retiring over 8 years ago now.
Excellent.
And during that time, I was still get my hand in with the football, and gained my qualifications as high as I could go, and worked for a number of professional football clubs, and including Cardiff City. They offered me opportunities to come back there to work in their centres of excellence and into their academy, and also back at Swansea, which I am at present. I'm working at Swansea. I'm sort of a senior scout there now in the academy. So I enjoy that, and I enjoy presenting the Soul Show as well on a number of stations around the world.
So with all your interests, which you're carrying on, you're now really being able to indulge your real passion, which is soul.
That is exactly right. And I think, when you do have time to yourself, that you do retire, you can do what you really want to do. So I've got more opportunities now to develop my show. And also, hopefully in the future, what we're starting to do is to set up our own radio station, and that should be hopefully coming online later on this year. And I'll probably present in a sort of I'll be doing soul on there, but I'm also developing a different style of program, probably aimed at the 70s, not soul, but sort of music from the 70s then, and everything about the 70s. So looking to develop that this year, as well as keeping the soul shows going.
Yeah. I mean, soul music for a lot of people like myself was part of growing up. It wasn't necessarily a genre which I was into as much as you were, but it was always there in the background. And I, to me, and probably a lot of other people, the listeners, soul music was Motown.
Yes, of course.
And then, of course, we would hear, about Wigan and Northern Soul, and then there was funk. I mean, could you just tell us a little bit about the different styles of soul?
I think there is. It originated really in African American community in the early 50s and early 60s. When they combined elements of gospel music, R&B, and jazz, and then, as you said, labels such as Motown and Stax and Atlantic were influential during the civil rights movement, and it became really popular all around the world, and having a direct influence as well on rock music. And then by the early 70s, soul was influenced by a lot of psychedelic rock as well. But I think that it happened around about 1968.
Okay,
where soul music sort of began to splinter. Yeah, and like some artists developed funk. And others developed like a slicker style, a more sophisticated style, which probably you could Philly soul probably.
Are there any funk artists that you would say were the forerunners of funk?
Oh well, Parliament and Funkadelic were the kings, for me personally. Lucky enough to see them back in the day as well. But George Clinton, funk, of course, James Brown, they were the great artists. And you had bands like the Ohio Players, and of course, Bill Curtis and the Fatback Band as well. He probably would have been the inventor of hip hop, really, that Fatback Band. But those artists, but particularly Bootsy Collins, George Clinton, Parliament, Funkadelic, which we came to call P-Funk. Yeah. They were the most influential for me. And a lot of bands like the Gap Band, you could hear all the influences then coming from Parliament and Funkadelic into a lot of other bands' work. But they were the ones that really took it off from. They were brilliant, and people like Brass Construction as well, who were just fantastic. So it's wonderful music.
It's interesting how music has evolved over the years, isn't it? I mean, you had the soul of the '60s, and then the funk. And then sort of disco came out of did disco come out of soul, do you think?
Yes, it did, really. I think, as I say, it started to splinter. The 70s stuff was influenced by psychedelic rock, and there are other offshoots like neo-soul and disco as well. And some of the disco stuff was absolutely fantastic if you went to the right clubs that you knew. They wouldn't play the commercial disco, but they'd have a disco that was really a lot of funk in there, lots of elements of funk, and that's what we went for. We were aficionados, really. We would only go to these underground funk clubs and soul clubs, where you wouldn't hear these tracks ever on the radio. Of course, there was no Facebook and no social media then, so you relied on the radio to hear them. But if you went to the good clubs, you'd only hear these in those clubs. So then you would look to buy them and go into Derek's record shops or Woolworths and try and order them. And I remember like getting there were Japanese imports in those days where you would you could get them in Japan because they were big funk lovers over there.
Oh, right.
And the Japanese import labels, they would bring them over, but they would cost you then, back in the 70s, I bought a Rolls Royce track vinyl. That was cost me £35 back then. I was probably only earning £9 a week.
£35.
That's how much I loved it.
What, £35 for as it was an LP?
Just an album, yeah. It was just the album, and it was a Japanese import.
Wow.
And they were all that price because you couldn't get them. They were rare, but you could get them from Japan. So we all sort of got on that bandwagon, paid an absolute fortune for them. Yeah. And we'd have them, the stuff that the boys were playing in the clubs.
Yeah. And what about all this stuff that went on in Wigan, the Northern Soul scene? Was that part of what you did?
Yeah, Northern Soul, of course, it's massive. Yeah, I loved it. You could possibly argue that was probably real soul for me. When a lot of the DJs did go across to New York and across to the States and picked up on tracks that were cast away by the record labels and deemed as not good enough, and they were cast out. There was only so much of them printed and they weren't good enough. The DJs went over there, brought them back, and the Northern Soul guys then, went into the Northern clubs, and that's why it was called Northern Soul, and played them to crowds, and the crowds absolutely loved them. And is that a great? Sorry, Bob. Go on.
Is that still going? Is there Northern Soul?
Yes.
Oh, it is.
Yes, I'm actually going to if it's still on. I don't think it will. But I'm going to one in April. It's an all-dayer. They got the all-dayers, all-nighters, and it's back now with a vengeance. Northern Soul,
all-nighters,
all-nighters, all-dayers.
That's a name from the past, isn't it?
yeah. Everybody used to go there, and then they had a great club down here in Wales called Drones Nightclub, and they used to have Northern Soul nights there, and the Northern Soul dancers and from Wigan they used to come down in their droves and dance there as well, So they were sort of spreading the word then to us down here.
Yeah. Now I've got an interesting question. This one, when you listen to the charts these days, you listen to a certain type of music, whoever it is, but I don't hear a lot of soul that I would consider to be. They play the oldies, the Four Tops and the Temptations and Al Green, but I don't really hear what I consider to be contemporary soul. Is that right, or is that where you come up with what you play?
I think you're spot on. It's most of the radio stations are controlled by one company, and so if an artist, is an indie artist, he's going to be very, very difficult to get any airplay because the record companies are in with that one particular company, and they are pushing their well-known artists. And then they will flood all their radio stations, which they may have 10 of them or 20 of them, with that one particular track. So for an artist to get in and have an airplay is nigh on impossible these days. It's not like it used to be. So you're right, Bob. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there much of a contemporary soul scene then?
Yeah, it's massive. Absolutely huge, yeah. As I say, you've got the UK soul charts, sweet rhythm charts. There's a number of charts around the world. And also the bands are playing all over the country. In different venues, down as far as Bournemouth. I was in a soul bar down at Bournemouth last summer. It's absolutely fantastic there. London, of course, is packed, and so Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff. So they have soul nights and soul contemporary artists appearing there, which is great.
Yeah, I bet it is. But what sort of numbers of people attend these events?
Yeah, they're full. They're full, because we all know the artists. Like, say, if, for example, if Vincent Broomfield came over from Miami, Vincent, he's a sax player and a singer. Now, he's been working for many, many years. If Vincent releases a track, he will get in touch with us. We have a personal connection with Vince, and we all love him, and we'll always play his music because his music is fantastic. And he's consistently in the UK soul charts, and I think he's had 3 number ones. So if Vince came over, he'd sell out the venues.
Yeah,
and he's just one of the artists. Donna Allen is another one. From Florida, they sell out when they come over here. So yeah, it's fantastic. It's a thriving scene.
I've heard of these artists because I've listened to your show, Gary, but I've never really heard them on normal radio stations.
No, you won't. I mean, Donna goes back to the 80s. She had 2 top 10 UK hits on the pop charts, but since then, very, very difficult for her to get anything, And even people like Chris Jasper, who's a good friend of mine, and he's friendly with a lot of soul presenters, and he gives an awful lot of his time. Chris was, Jasper Isley, and the Isley brothers, of course. He was a mainstay of the Isley brothers. He was the only one that wasn't a brother, but he did all the arranging for them, and he played on every track.
Who's the number one soul artist at the moment in the contemporary scene, would you say?
Oh, it's a difficult one, really. It's a difficult one to say because...
I didn't want to put you on the spot, Gary.
Yeah, on the UK soul scene, Mark Staggers is big. And he's a London lad, and he's, he always comes up with some great tracks. But as I say, people like Vincent Broomfield are up there, and Donna Allen are up there. There's quite a few. It's not sort of a consistent thing. It's quite diverse. The music is very diverse. So each month you're loving another emerging talent. I mean, there's a brilliant artist out called Never Sleep Boy. They've got they play what they call a genre called day and night music. Day and night disco. So it's just like listening to something that you would have heard back in Studio 54 back in the day. He's brand new, and he's entered the UK soul charts now with his latest single, and he's doing extremely well. So there's a harking back as well to that old style.
These people that are contemporary at the moment, are they mainly harking back to the old days, or do you think soul music has evolved as we've travelled through time?
Yeah, it definitely has evolved. I mean, there's also a band I like very much at the moment. They're from Estonia. They're a funk band. They call Lex Soul Dance Machine. Yeah, and their music is absolutely brilliant. It's funky, but it's brand new, it's fresh, and it's great. So they'll do very, very well. So I enjoy playing those.
Where can people listen to this music that you present?
They should listen to me on. They can go to Mixcloud, and they could click on Mixcloud, and if they type in the Garry Williams Soul Show, I'll be there. All the shows are there. And if you don't like my show, you can click onto Soul in Mixcloud, and all the soul shows are on there anyway. So it's nice and easy to operate, and it's simple to listen to, and easy to carry around with you on your phone or wherever you want to go, So Mixcloud is a great way. And SoundCloud, obviously, as well. But Mixcloud is the one I use.
And so people can get onto Spotify and find these things?
Yes. The artists, particularly the new artists, they're available everywhere, and they pushing their music out through social media all the time. I know another artist I like very much is a lad called Stan Edward Moore from America, and he's got a brand new album out, and he's pushing it across all social media platforms, and you can buy them anywhere you like. And I think when you go onto Mixcloud, the track will come up that's playing. You can actually click on that and buy it there and then. So
that's good.
It's a great for the artists that way.
Yeah. No, that's great stuff. So if people want to find out a bit more about your shows, Gary, where should they go?
They can come to my Facebook page. I'm on Facebook, and again, it's under the Garry Williams Soul Show.
I'll put that on the show notes so people can have a look at it.
Thanks, Bob. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm across that again, Garry Williams Soul Show, and I'm also on Twitter at Garry Williams 17. They can find me on there. So across most of the social media platforms, and like I say on Mixcloud as well, the shows are there. You can listen. Shows are now an hour long. Used to be 2 hours, but I've cut it down to an hour. I think that's more appropriate for people, and it's working well at the moment.
And this is every week, is it?
Yeah, it's every week. Yeah, I go out on a Friday night on different stations. A Friday night, I'm on a station called I2 Radio out in Spain. And then about an hour later than that, I'm out in Salt Lake City in America on ASSK Radio. And then Legend 107 on a Saturday out of Miami. Sunday, I'm out of Texas on WGLRO Radio. And then late Sunday night, I'm back home here in the UK on Radio Walcombe over there in Devon. So it's great.
You must get through the air miles, Garry.
Yeah, yeah. I wish.
Yeah. Just thinking about the carbon footprint there. So, no, that's great. Right, yeah. Do you know how many listeners you have then?
I mean, the lads out in the States, they do monthly. They send me a list. They send me firstly a list of the most listened to countries that I listen to, and the ones I'm hitting at the moment is always America. It's America first, Germany, and then the UK, where those are the top three. And I have hit 80 to 100,000 on occasions there, which I'm really pleased about. So,
that's impressive, Garry.
I'm really impressed with that. As I say, because I do work with a lot of American artists as well, their fans will tune in, they'll share my posts, they'll encourage their fans to listen, or their other artists to listen. Band called Raw Soul Express down in Miami there again. They got a big band. There's 8 to 10 of them in there. So they're always sharing my posts through the 8 of them, And it just spirals, and it's like it's just a snowball round. People start tuning in, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. You mentioned earlier on about a project that you've got to do with another radio station that you're starting. Is there anything more you can tell us about that?
It's in early development at the moment, but we're going to try and aim it at more of a community-style station, not where we're just going to play music, but we're going to get the community to come in and talk and make their own shows on a variety of subjects that work in their own community. Plus, then it'll be dotted with entertainment programs. So that's the type of thing we're looking at this year. So
when you say community, a local community or worldwide community?
Well, it'll start local, but then it'll grow. It'll grow outwards. That's the aim of it. So because people have so much in common, and we can put people in touch with different groups that they have common threads with. So that's what we're looking at, and it's coming on quite nicely at the moment. So, but it's going to take another 3 or 4 months, I think. Yeah.
So, have you got any other projects that you'd like to tell listeners about?
Not really. I mean, just developing the Soul Show is enough, and working with the artists is really exciting stuff, So, we're working with the artists. A lot of them have asked me to do some promoting for them, to bring them over and do some presenting and manage the shows for them. Perhaps something like that might be forthcoming over the next year, something I might be interested in. Yeah. But again, it'll be the indie artists and helping them, really.
Yeah.
And some of the artists that have been famous and can't get back and get the music back on air again. So
yeah. Garry, it's been great talking to you. And I think it's fantastic what you're doing, giving people this opportunity to listen to some great music. And I'll put on the show notes all the links to the various radio stations if I can.
Oh, thank you, Bob. I really appreciate that.
No, that's great. And I shall be listening to you next Sunday. Is that the next time? Live show?
I'll be on this Friday on I2 Radio, 7 o'clock UK time.
Okay, great. All right, Garry.
Looking forward to that. Yeah, it's great. Well, thanks very much, Bob, for inviting me on here.
It's a pleasure.
Today. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having a chat with you. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Have a great week.
Thanks very much, Bob.
My thanks go to today's guest, Garry Williams, international soul music presenter. If you would like to hear Garry's shows, please check out the show notes for details. You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope that you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe to the show for future episodes, and if you like what you hear, please rate and review. Until next time, this is Bob Wells, wishing you all the very best.